This is
We're not assuming first and foremost people are going to be bad actors. We want to make sure that we can help them be good actors.
A warning to anyone stepping foot back in BC. You must have a specific plan to self-isolate as part of strict new enforcement measures to stop the spread of COVID-19 at BC's border.
Good evening. Isolate or else. That's the message from Premier John Horgan tonight.
The BC government is implementing mandatory enforcement of self-isolation rules for travelers returning to our province. CTV's Penny Daflos is live at YVR. And Penny, the bottom line here is this: if you don't have a plan to self-isolate, the government might just do it for you.
And that's just the next phase. So it's actually happening right now. Anybody arriving here at YVR from outside of Canada is being asked to fill out this form detailing where they will be and swearing that the information is correct. But the Premier is also saying that the feds are looking at apps or other features on smartphones to make sure that people are staying where they should be. Travelers arriving at YVR are now getting a clear message from border guards.
14-day mandatory quarantine. I think they said it's like up to $1 million fine.
$1 million fine and/or up to 3 years in jail.
But with concerns too many people haven't been respecting that quarantine order, the Premier is bringing down the hammer.
Travelers coming back to Canada, whether they be at land crossings, whether they be at Vancouver International Airport, that they will be met by BC officials, they'll be met by federal officials, and they will be required to explain in detail with forms that will be provided on flight, forms that are also available on the web, to ensure that these legal documents are completed upon arrival and that a plan has been put in place.
Until now, Canada has largely relied on the honor system for the quarantine rule for returning travelers.
To me, it seems a little selfish for anybody to say, well, the hell with it, the law doesn't apply to me.
A couple on Vancouver Island who recently returned from travel but refused to stay in their Maple Bay home appear to be exactly the kind of example the Premier wants to quash.
People have to take this seriously. People are dying. All you have to do is look at New York City or Italy, and we could be just like them.
It really doesn't take that much to have a plan.
My brother's going to pick me up. Stay at the house, yeah. He said separate bedrooms, separate bathroom.
My daughter left my car here. I have pictures of where it's supposed to be.
Horgan is particularly concerned about visitors from Alberta and snowbirds coming home in time for the Easter long weekend. He's demanding they self-isolate for 2 weeks as we all stay home as much as possible.
We're so close. We've done so much, and so many people have sacrificed. We don't want to let that slide away because a handful of people decide that it's okay for them to bend the rules rather than to bend the curve.
So, Penny, what have you learned about the monitoring and enforcement of this?
Well, as for monitoring, the Premier says that a lot of those details are still being worked out, including potential app-based surveillance. As for enforcement, the Premier is actually saying if you know somebody who has returned from travel, you see them out and about and they're not respecting that quarantine, he wants you to approach that person, urge them to go back home, and if they refuse, he wants you to call your local police. So again, anybody arriving here or at a land border crossing that does not have any plans or anywhere specific to stay to execute this quarantine, the government is going to make sure that you have somewhere to stay, and it doesn't matter if you're a Canadian resident or not, they will take care of that, Scott.